weekend for the Islanders. They lose 2 games and a goaltender. We've got the key takeaways and what the loss of Semyon Varlamov to COVID will mean for this team going forward. All that and more coming up on the Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast. So glad you could join us today, and thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, and that does now include YouTube. So check us out there, and if you subscribe, you could watch each episode of this podcast rather than just listen to it. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. We have got a lot to discuss on today's show. The Islanders with a lost weekend. They lost Friday in Edmonton, lost again Saturday evening in Calgary, and before that game started, lost goalie Semyon Varlamov. He is now on the COVID reserve list in COVID protocol. We will talk about the 2 games, plus what the short-term loss of Varlamov will mean to the Islanders, and some ways you may not expect that it could affect this. To have our Islanders birthday of the day, a goaltender from a little bit more than a decade ago. So let's see if you can guess who that is. If you've got something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like us to talk about, please send us an email. The email address, lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we are happy to mention you on the show when we talk about whatever it is that's on your mind. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on Twitter at Ice Wars, NYRVSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game, so make sure that you join us. Always interact with Islanders fans at any time, and I'll also provide instant insight and analysis during the game. So a rough weekend, to say the least, for the New York Islanders. They lose 3-1 on Friday in Edmonton. Just a disappointing game from the standpoint of the Oilers. Really a team that has struggled defensively, and the Islanders just weren't able to get much going with the puck, and weren't a lot of scoring chances. And frustrating to watch. You going up against a team that we talked about that the Islanders' worst possible. Why? Because they had just changed coaches, and when something like that happens, there's usually a bit of a jolt. That the team gets, he'll turn out to the coach, and negative previous coach is gone, and so this being the first game under a name, but only scored 1 goal. It was a power play tally by Anthony Beauvillier, and let's face it, there were a lot of shots on goal, but not a lot of quality opportunities. And he had no titles and game for Ilya Sorokin, but again, at least one or two of those three goals that he let in, the kind of goals you want back. So you look at the stat sheet, and it's like, oh, yeah, Islanders did fine, yet the actual game and visual performance and it was okay. It wasn't disastrous, but again, in a low-scoring game, you don't want to allow soft goals. You just can't afford to do that, and it ends up being what happens. So the Islanders fall 3-1, and that was certainly a good overall performance. Again, I think the theme through both of the games over the weekend, just that spark that the Islanders did seem to have Wednesday night. Barry Trotz juggled the line. Cal Clutterbuck on the first line with Barzal and Lee, and moved Anthony Beauvillier down to the fourth line with Cizikas and Martin. You know, those kind of moves, they very often that Sherm spark and that Sherm Wednesday. But because that they are not really ideal, Buck isn't suited for the long haul, and a fourth line, probably more of a third line player on a good team. When you add up, the new combinations don't always work over the long haul, and they didn't work for the Islanders on Friday. Then Saturday, the Islanders only problem had one Friday, one. So look, if simply not who will make sense. When the game started, look at protocols tested positive, able to with that lead 5 day and look, this is not unfamiliar territory early in the season when still hurt. All the starts at that point and played well for and so especially over you'll see Sorokin. Now the question then becomes the back going to be. And it would either be Jakub Skarek or Corey Schneider. You want to go with a guy and maybe Skarek first, maybe that would be wise, except Skarek hasn't been playing the last few games and while the Bridgeport Islanders haven't officially said he has COVID or is in COVID protocol. So it's either going to be Corey Schneider, the veteran, or Ken Appleby. Knowing the Islanders and the way they think, and Lou Lamoriello and Barry Trotz, you're probably going to see Schneider. But overall, it's either Schneider or Appleby coming up to be the backup, and barring injury or some other unforeseen circumstances, we're going to see Ilya Sorokin in between the pipes for the Islanders, at least for the next, probably, possibly longer than that, depending on Varlamov's situation. But, there are more possible implications of Varley getting COVID. We'll talk that and talk a little bit about loss on Saturday to Calgary. So more to get to on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Built Bar. This is the time of year I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a New Year's resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they are a treat. And they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors like yummy, cinnamony, churro, coconut marshmallow, and banana cream pie. They are so good. These are going to be your new favorite. And all Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, that includes the Puffs. And look, they're low calorie, high protein, and high fiber. Most Built Bars contain only 130 calories, just 4 grams of sugar, and 4 net carbs while packing 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which has roughly 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. At Built Bar, they are all about the taste. They make it delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy. I don't know how they do it, but they pull it off every time. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. It's Super Week, brought to you by Get Upside, and there's no better place to get coverage of the big game than the Locked On NFL podcast. Locked On Bengals and Locked On Rams are in LA all week covering the big game. So I wanted to discuss some of the bigger implications of Semyon Varlamov testing positive for COVID up in Canada. And look, we started discussing what was happening, for the couple of games. And one of the Bridgeport goalies will get called up and we'll sort of go from there. But it goes beyond that. Here's the thing, and this is the big concern. And we talked about this in November and December when the Islanders had, 7, 8, 9 players in COVID protocols at the same time, and the league sort of shut them down for a couple of weeks at a time. 2 of the players who did not get COVID during that time, and I think almost everyone else on the Islanders' regular roster has had it, were Ilya Sorokin and Semyon Varlamov. And when you consider that the 2 goalies are studying film together, possibly, working together with the goalie coach, practicing, going over things together, it is a very real possibility that not only will Semyon Varlamov be out, but it is possible, and I hope it's not going to be the case, but we have to keep an eye on Ilya Sorokin because he was probably a close contact of Semyon Varlamov. And I could tell you right now, the Islanders can get by without one of those 2 goalies for 2-3 games, 5 games even if need be. But if you're talking about going without both Varlamov and Sorokin, and you're relying on Jakub Skarek or Corey Schneider or Ken Appleby to be your NHL goalie, that is not an easy situation for the New York Islanders, and it is something I hope the team doesn't have to deal with. I try very hard not to be a pessimist. I try to be a realist, try to be a straight shooter and call it as I see it. But as soon as I heard that Varley had tested positive and was in COVID protocol, I said, oh my, what if Sorokin gets it as well? We have our fingers crossed, and certainly we wish Semyon Varlamov a complete and speedy recovery. Odds are he's asymptomatic only because we know he was ready to start the game before he tested positive. Now, that may change. He may develop symptoms, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, he could develop them, but hopefully he'll be back after the Thursday game, and hopefully Ilya Sorokin does not contract COVID and the Islanders are able to dodge another potential bullet in that sense. Saturday, to a concern. 21 shots on goal. Very rarely was Jacob Markstrom, the Flames goalie, tested in this one. Ilya Sorokin had to play the back-to-back. Didn't know he was starting until just before the game. And again, he gave up 5 goals and 29 shots, but didn't have his A game. And I guess to an extent, that is expected. Available on this road. The Islanders need to get into the playoff hunt. Night, that Saturday, you needed to at least get a point, if not 2. And the sense of urgency on this team just wasn't there. And I can go up and down the lineup and talk about the key players on this team. Look, Matthew Barzal, the Islanders' most gifted offensive player, 0 shot goal in this one. Anders Lee, the captain, 0 shots on goal in this game. It's okay that Ross Johnston and Martin and Calgary, between them, the 3 of them and that one Mavericks, but they were on a 4-game road trip back. Their goaltender was scratched literally at the last minute before the game was to start. All of those things work against your hockey team. But the one thing that you have to have, and that the Islanders did not have, you've got to go out there and play inspired hockey. There has to be a certain amount of desperation in your game, knowing that you need these points and that you're up against a deep, talented team like the Calgary Flames. They didn't have it. And if you go back over the course of this 60-minute game, maybe the Islanders even clearly was 10 later on in the game without a lot of success. So, yeah, 2 points for him. Noah Dobson with a goal, but he's a -2. And how about Ryan Bullock? -4. Andy Green, -3 in this game. But overall, just a flat performance by the Islanders. And you can forgive an off game. You can forgive, a team running out of gas to an extent late in the game, but you cannot forgive that lack of effort. And here's an area in Island, but forwards JTO and Matt Martin, Dobson and Bellick did not get credited with any. So you look at it and you just see the little things that teams need to do to win hockey games that show you're engaged and giving you the effort. The Islanders didn't have that in this game. One thing that was impressive, and I got to acknowledge it right now, Noah Dobson, he scored a goal. He had 3 shots on goal, but he had 7 blocked shots, and that is impressive. Yeah, he was a -2. Wasn't his best game overall, but 7 block shots at least. Noah Dobson appeared to be out there and giving that effort, and that was encouraging. But overall, if the Islanders play the way they did Friday to get Locked On Islanders podcast back, we'll have our own seasons for the Isles. If you guess who it is, let's get it right, but it's Islanders' birthday today. More still to come on the Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode brought to you by your friends at BetOnline. Football may be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and we are a day late as Sunday was the 37th birthday of former Islanders goaltender Montoya. Il Cubano, born in Chicago, and was originally drafted in the first round, 6th overall by the New York Rangers after a very solid career at the University of Michigan. Never made it up to the Rangers. His NHL debut actually with then Phoenix Coyotes in 2008, 2009, up on the Islanders in 2010, 2011, and then again in 2011, 2012, later played for Winnipeg, Florida, Montreal, and Edmonton before hanging up his professional skates in 2018, 2019 season. All in all, 168 career NHL games for Montoya, a 2.65 career goals against average, and a 908 save percentage. And I always enjoy talking to Al Montoya. Had a good sense of humor, a great teammate, and he had some good games for the Islanders on some not so good Islanders. We're going to look at one of his better performances. October 13th, 2011, at the Nassau Coliseum, a Columbus Day matinee as a Lightning come into town. And for the Lightning, Dwayne Rolison, a former Islander, was the starting goaltender, while, of course, Montoya was the goalie for the New York Islanders. And the Islanders get on the board very quickly, just 36 seconds in before you've even gotten to your seat. John Tavares, his first of the year, unassisted, and it was 1-0 Islanders. But the Lightning answer at the 7:10 mark of the opening period. Steven Stamkos, his first from Marc-Andre Bergeron, a former Islander. We were all even at 1-1. 1. Then the Islanders take control of the game. Matt Molson, his first from John Tavares and Mark Eaton at 9:28. 2-1 Islanders. Tavares scoring his second of the game from Matt Molson and P.A. Parento. That was the top line back then. That made it 3-1 Isles at 15:15 of the first. And then Parento, his first from Tavares at 18:39. Islanders with a commanding 4-1 lead after one period. They add to that lead in the second. Michael Grabner, his first from Kyle Oposo at 6:47. And after that, it was all Al Montoya. Montoya making an impressive 34 saves in 35 shots, a .971 save percentage. Islanders skate away with a 1 win over the visiting Tampa Bay Lightning. And again, a 34 save effort for Al Montoya. He is our Islanders' birthday today. We wish him a happy 37th birthday and happy more. Islanders kind of start to run out of time, and game tomorrow in Buffalo really becomes a must-win for the Islanders. Tomorrow, we'll have a full preview of that game, plus updates on Semyon Varlamov and any other Islander who may be affected by COVID as a result of Varley's positive test. Once again, want to thank everyone for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets. It's your one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets is hosted by your boy Q with expert insight and analysis from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.